Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Ludus-Historia. Today I wanted to talk about a game that has fully captured my attention, called Clockwork Knight, a Sega Saturn game that released in 1995 in North America. The game was met with mixed reviews, calling it an average platformer. Of that, I agree. However, the game's world is full of interesting and wonderful ideas to branch off of, so much so it did receive a sequel in the same year. This is why I think despite its basic appearance, I think Clockwork Knight has been a true gem for Sega. So let's dive into the world of Clockwork Knight. The game opens with a song sung by the Clockwork Fairy Princess Chelsea, whose voice wakes the toys. Upon waking up, the toys begin to go about their lives, which leads us into our main character, Sir Tungara di Pepperucci III, or Pepper for short, who is vying for the heart of the princess against his rival Ginger. In this, Pepper fails, but finds his chance when a bout of thunder arrives, leading to the power flickering, which leads to the two to look for Princess Chelsea, who is being taken from her clock. This begins the first level of the game, Betsy's Room. Betsy's Room is a classic tutorial area, similar to World 1-1 in Super Mario. The gameplay is a very standard platformer, with Pepper using a key sword to deal with his enemies that want to stop him from reaching the princess. Now, you may ask, what's unique about this? Well, it's the setting. Games like Mario take place in their own worlds, but it's more than just a platformer. It's the Goomba, Yoshi, and Mario himself that make the game, well, it's the game. You wouldn't play Mario without Mario, would you? Clockwork Knight may have a similar plot to Super Mario, but the world itself is full of possibilities, from natural objects that would damage toys, as well as a large variety of toys to draw upon, which we see in the game with enemies like the mini clown jack-in-the-boxes, to the wind-up robots that shoot projectiles, to the clocks throwing their gears. While yes, many of these have counterparts in other platformers, the art direction must be acknowledged. A big part of the game's development came from the Saturn's own abilities, which allowed the characters to be rendered in 2D during gameplay, but also allowed for full cutscenes within the game, which allowed the developers to put more heart into the story. However, this was a big thing which the North American and European releases missed out on. This change, though, was made to make the game have less hints, which removed many text chats with Pepper's friends. However, this did hurt the overall quality and story of the game to attempt to make it more difficult for other audiences. This approach, of course, failed, however, and still led to many in these markets to claim the game was too easy. Which, yes, the game is relatively easy. Yet, it's still amazing to walk through each level because they have countless details put into the background and sprites that make you feel like you could picture this world in your head long after you're done playing. Now that we've talked about the elephant in the room, let's get on to the gameplay, shall we? Pepper has a few ways he can attack. He can attack while airborne, standing, and crouching, and if standing still while spamming the attack button, you can continue to spin, which enemies cannot get through, but of course you can't move. The game overall has 4 rooms, with a minigame in between the first 3. Finally, there's a boss at the end, which we will get there in time, but let's finish talking about Betsy's Room first. Betsy's Room is, of course, the most detailed of any of the other rooms, as it's the starting area for the game. This room is just amazing. The art on the wall, the blocks, and the decorations just make the game feel unique, as well as the second level takes place mostly on the bookshelf, and the gameplay designs for this area just make you feel like the bookshelf itself wants to stop you. But once you make it through to the last area, you fight a boss named Bob. I'm not joking about that. His full name is Dandy Bob, but Bob is better. Anyways, the boss fight is rather simple, but the character of Bob is interesting in his design, as he is a baby doll, dressed up in a suit and a top hat, which make him a big contradiction when, of course, he gets angry and cries as he begins to lose. Overall, the first area of the game feels like it could be a real girl's bedroom, and catches a lot of cliches that come with it, like dolls and even the princess at the start. After Betsy's Room, you enter Kevin's room, which we can assume is Betsy's brother. Now, Kevin's room is a lot more complicated than Betsy's, with the room containing some more difficult levels which require moving batteries and more precise jumps, with level 2 here being particularly difficult as the trains are required to make it through the entire level, and you have to make precise jumps to avoid obstacles without the train leaving you behind. Now after that, we encounter a pretty fun boss, a transforming jet robot. This boss drops enemies onto you that you must clear before they group up and make things difficult. But even after you get that done, you can't just attack him directly as you could Bob. You have to jump and attack, which adds a level of complexity to the fight that keeps the game interesting. After beating the robot, you move on to the next room. The next room we enter is the kitchen, where of course we must deal with kitchen-related objects such as stoves and jars with enemies inside. And even a sink level. Now, I know what it may seem, but the sink level is actually my favorite designed in the entire game. In the level, the water rises and falls with certain objects rising and falling with it, and you must make it across without falling into the water for too long. This level also has the coolest secrets, being able to turn off the sinks and finding a secret exit, which doesn't do too much other than take you to the end, but it's still cool to see how the developers took that into account. Now, on the final level of the kitchen, you fight this squishy duck with a pot on its head that uses it to attack. However, this boss is actually pretty easy. The only difference between him and Bob is that he requires more hits than Bob does. Overall, the designs for this area are amazing. The boss fight just leaves a lot to be desired, especially after the robot in Kevin's room. Now, after that, we finally enter the final area, the attic. The most difficult and confusing part of the game. These levels are pretty fun overall, with 1 and 2 having difficult sections with enemies that can quickly lead to a game over without timing and paying attention to their attacks. Yet despite those difficulties, the boss for this level is actually the hardest in the game, as you need to pick up and throw its head over and over again in a tight area with radial attacks that can catch you if you stay too close to a wall now and then. Overall, the attic is the least well designed, only because its colors, it's a lot less vibrant, but the fights and the level of difficulty really make you feel that it's the final stage. Or so you think. Now, finally after beating the robot in the attic, you free Princess Chelsea. And of course, Pepper runs to help. But then an arm comes into view, before he can make it there. It pans out to show that the TV has come to life, and is the final boss. And honestly, it's a very cool looking boss, but he's actually pretty easy to beat. But after you finish him off, you finally rescue the princess, and all can be well again. And you're rewarded with a song by the character I have yet to mention, Saltia, a perfume bottle who hosts a game called Saltian Roulette. This is actually the mini-game you play in between the first 4 rooms, where you can use coins gathered in levels to gamble to get more lives. This is a pretty nice thing to break up the monotony of gameplay, and overall I would say it's a good system to run along the main levels. Now, back to the ending, where we learn that the princess isn't waking up, and if she doesn't wake up to sing them awaken the next night, then they never will. This is where the game ends off and where the second inevitably picks up, yet I haven't gotten to play it yet because it's expensive and hard to come by. But someday I want to play it, and when I do, I will probably make a part 2 to this video. But anyways, even after all this, you may ask why this game is such a gem. Well, the game's premise isn't new, but the idea of the world is the toys coming to life in such a way where the world it puts them into when their life source is taken away is a story that can be expanded upon in later stories. Unfortunately, Sega didn't think so, and after the second game, the series never had another entry to this day. Hopefully, someday, though, when Sega needs to dust off its old catalog, Clockwork Knight might see the light of day. And thank y'all for listening to me talk about a game I have enjoyed, and I hope I inspire some of y'all to check it out sometime. Of course, leave a comment or a post in my community if you want to see me check out a game or review, or even just a question. And please, if you liked it, like and subscribe. This has been Ludus-Historia. Catch y'all in the next one.